They started pounding on the doors, and at one point they broke through a window. They grabbed a Jewish girl by the neck and started dragging her out. Thankfully, security intervened and managed to get her back in the building. That level of violence is not something someone should be exposed to.
This is Bishop Robert Stearns. I'm here on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. The Mount of Olives is just behind me. And Solidarity Sunday 2025 was an incredible coming together of Jews and Christians standing in solidarity together, declaring never again. I want to invite you to join me as you hear the speeches, the testimony, the witness firsthand of Jewish leaders who are standing strong and proud in the midst of attack, in the midst of this rising anti-Semitism. They are raising their voices, and we are forming a wall of protection around them. Join me as you hear their amazing stories.
In the book of Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 11, it reminds us that we are called as believers to expose the works of darkness. So it's my great honor today to introduce to you Gerard Filitti, a man who has dedicated himself on a mission to do this. Gerard is senior counsel at the Lawfare Project, a nonprofit legal think tank that takes on cases of anti-Semitism, particularly those involving students and educational systems in this country. He is deeply familiar with pervasive anti-Semitism, that which would exist in parts of our educational system especially, and has been at the forefront of combating that. You may have seen him on the news, giving reports or participating in interviews. Today, he joins us through the partnership of Eagle's Wings and of Moral Hearts Alliance to share some of his experiences, not only in the past, but current situations, as I spoke with him a couple of days ago. And he is every day working on anti-Semitism cases, which is still surprising to me that exists. And to share his experience and his insight in the challenges facing our Jewish community today. So I'd like for us to do this. Can we give a warm Memphis Tabernacle welcome to Gerard Filitti?
Thank you, Pastor David, and thank you to Eagle's Wings and the Moral Hearts Alliance for sponsoring and organizing this event, and thank you to all of you. It is such a pleasure to see the love, to feel the energy in this room for all of you who came out here, and it really is such an amazing experience, and thank you for joining us in support of Israel and the Jewish community. One of the beautiful songs this morning spoke about the God of Moses, our God, and the miracle of parting the Red Sea. And what that was the story of the Jewish people escaping oppression, liberation from oppression. This was thousands of years ago. We all know this. We believe it because we are here today. We know this archaeologically. We know that the Bible is true. We know that what happened is history. And when you think about it, thousands of years ago, the Jewish people were escaping oppression. They were seeking liberation by the grace of God. And that battle is not over yet. We see that today. We saw this in World War II. We saw this with the Holocaust. Every generation, there is an attempt to extinguish the Jewish people. Every generation, it's up to all of us to stand up together and fight back. My name is Gerard Filitti. I'm an attorney and senior counsel at the Lawfare Project. The Lawfare Project is a nonprofit based in New York City, working globally to fight for the civil rights and the human rights of the Jewish people. That's the emphasis of the Lawfare Project. The importance here is that other minority groups, other communities have people dedicated to working for them. We see this with the African American community. We see this with every other minority community. We need that. The Jewish people need that today more than ever. I grew up in Queens in Forest Hills. When I was growing up, all you had to do was go outside, go to a park, sit on a bench, and you would meet people who had the lived experience of World War II, of the Holocaust. You met people who had numbers tattooed on their arms, who could tell their personal story, their testimony of what they endured, what humanity endured by the lack of humanity. So we felt this. Growing up, we knew the stories. We knew what evil was. And I figured that everyone knew this. Everyone would continue to know this. It would never happen again. Never again. That's what we keep saying. But somewhere over time, that knowledge has started to get lost. That generation has started to die out, and today I meet many people who think the Holocaust never happened, or it's a myth, or it's a story, or it's a way for Jews to get power, that these are all lies. Which is why it's so important on International Holocaust Remembrance Day, marking the liberation of Auschwitz, to remember that this is what man is capable of, this great inhumanity, to listen to the stories, to listen to the testimony of the people who endured it. They may not be here with us today, and some, thankfully, are still, but we need to remember those stories. Because when you don't, when you go about your lives, when you go about taking care of everything that you have to do on a daily basis, you put this out of your head and evil is allowed to come back. I went to college, I went to grad school, I went to law school. I became a trial lawyer, working for the big companies, big law. At some place in my life, I realized that there needed to be more, that my heart was not full, that I was doing, that I was performing, but I was not living life, that there was more to it. I don't want to say it was God, I don't want to say it was spiritualism, I don't know what it was, but at some point I needed to give back, I needed to do more. So I started working with veterans, with the American service members who were injured in terrorist attacks in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the family members of those who were killed, and God bless our Army and Navy and Marine Corps and Air Force and all the veterans who served for us. Seeing what they went through in those terrorist attacks, going after the banks that financed this terrorism, that funneled money to Iran, to Hezbollah, to Hamas, to all these terrorist organizations, it's impossible not also to see the effect that it has on the Jewish people. Terrorism now we associate mostly with attacks on Jews. We see this in Israel. We saw this on Gaza when we had that invasion on October 7th, another attempted genocide. That's what we saw on that day in 2003. We saw attacks on the state of Israel, terrorist attacks. And when you see what the Jewish people are enduring today, you realize they need help. They need our help. They need our voices. They need litigation to uphold their civil rights. They need our support emotionally, to listen to their stories and be there for them. Because that's what we all need to do as human beings, as people of God. We need to listen and to be there for our fellow man. Now, one of my first clients, Jonathan Carton, was a student at Columbia. Columbia University, I think everyone here has seen TV, everyone here has seen the testimony that's come out of that school, where you have a head of school who thinks that whether or not something is a call for genocide is good or bad, it depends on the context. It doesn't. Genocide is bad. But this was before October 7. This was years before October 7. For all of you who are wearing a cross or a symbol of your faith, imagine what it's like walking down the street and being punched because of that symbol, because of your cross, because of your Star of David. You're wearing a head covering because that is what your understanding of your religion tells you to do. And someone sees that and they attack you for no other reason than because you are visibly a member of a religious group, visibly a member of an ethnic group, visibly a member of someone other, someone else, someone who doesn't belong. That's what Jonathan encountered every single day on Columbia's campus. Spat on, cursed, called a racist, called a Nazi. This is ironic. You're calling Jewish people who suffer the Nazi atrocities, you're calling them Nazis. Denying that Israel has a right to exist. Denying that Jews are a minority people. Being refused access to clubs and social activities because you're Jewish. This isn't after October 7. This is before. This is one story. And a school that did nothing, obviously, because look what happened on October 7. They're being hauled up by Congress. They're being sued now. And still it goes unchecked. This is one small example, but this is a story that unfortunately we hear all the time. We hear people at Columbia, people at Cooper Union. So Columbia University, you don't just need lawsuits. My firm, the Lawfare Project, we have a lawsuit against Columbia University. Takes some time to wind through the system, but you also need activism. You need that grassroots mobilization. The same way that people have come together for other minority communities, we need to mobilize for the Jewish people. We need to stand up and be heard when we see injustice. That's where the End Jew Hatred movement comes in, something that Brooke Goldstein, who founded the Lawfare Project, also started at the peak of the pandemic. Because the legal system doesn't always work, it's not perfect, it takes time. We need to show man that we are there for them. We need to show up and support them. That's activism, that's grassroots, that's rallies. So one evening after October 7, I'm at a rally outside of Columbia. And a police officer comes up to me because he knows who I work with. And he tells me that there's a situation at another school downtown in New York, Cooper Union, where Jewish students are locked in the library, afraid for their safety, because people are pounding on the windows with sticks, yelling that they're going to get them. We're going to kill you. You can't hide. And mumbling about genocide. And the police are asking, how can we convince these students that we're the good guys, that we're there to help? We want to get them out safely. Next day, I'm down at Cooper Union with outraged parents, outraged students. The school doesn't care. They're not seeing this as discrimination. They're not seeing this for what it is, Jew hatred. I hate using the word anti-Semitism, by the way. Anti-Semitism is a term that was invented in the 19th century by a German scholar to justify racism. That's not what we're dealing with. It's not an academic discussion. People are more afraid to be called racists and more afraid to be called Jew haters. They're afraid to be called out for their bigotry. So we have to call that out. Anti-Semitism is a debate. It's a discussion. It's an academic term. We have to call it out for what it is. They hate people. There's hatred in their hearts. And that's something that we need to help them with, to steer them away from that, because that's not what man is born with. No one is born with hate in their hearts. Hate is taught. Hate is learned. But we can discourage that. We can encourage people down the right path, down the righteous path, a path of love. So we have to call them out for what they are, which is haters, not someone who has an academic view of what the Jewish people are. Because the Holocaust is not an academic view, it's hate. Genocide is not an academic view, it's hate. October 7 was not an attack because someone didn't like the music they were playing at Nova. It was an attack because people hated Jews and hated that the fact that they have a state, that they have their state again. But going back to Cooper Union, standing outside of that school, these students were afraid for their lives. They were locked in the library, afraid to leave because people wanted to beat them up. People wanted to do them harm. In 2023, we're not talking about 1943, we're talking about 2023. Fast forward a month, there's a student at UC Berkeley, bastion of liberalism, where we love everyone. That's what they say, but that's not what they practice. You had a group of Jews who wanted to bring in a speaker to an event. Nothing confrontational, nothing political, just to be supported, to support one another in light of the horrific atrocities being committed on a daily basis. But pro-terror supporters don't want that to happen. So they blocked access to the building, they started pounding on the doors, and at one point they broke through a window. They grabbed a Jewish girl by the neck and started dragging her out. Thankfully, security intervened and managed to get her back in the building. That level of violence is not something someone should be exposed to. And again, this isn't a political view. This isn't an academic discussion. This is hate. This is targeting someone because they're Jewish in 2023, in today's America. Fast forward to Chicago, DePaul University, where I'm going out there on Tuesday because the police is finally taking action. 2 students, Jewish students, were out in front of their university with a sign, "I'm Jewish, ask me anything." One of them served in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, a veteran. He wanted to share his experience that Israel is not this oppressive state, that they're fighting for their lives, for their well-being, for the safety of their people. What happens? 2 masked men happen. One of them distracted these 2 students while the other snuck up behind them and attacked them. One of them took a soda can and hit my client so hard on the head that the can burst open, and he was unconscious, and they broke his friend's wrist. Because they're Jewish. Not because of some political ideology, not because they did something, not because they said something, but merely for being Jewish. That's what Jew hatred is today. It's walking down the street with an Israeli flag to be proud of your identity during a crisis and being attacked because you have that flag. It's being attacked because you wear dark clothing. You're visibly Jewish and people hate you. It's sitting on a subway and having someone come up and spit on you, saying, "You dirty Jew." That's the experience of the Jewish people today, and this is not just since October 7th. This has been happening in America for decades. Jew hatred is as systematized, as systemic as every other form of racism that we've seen. But where we've made great advances fighting other forms of bigotry, we are still silent. We still close our eyes to Jew hatred. In part because some people have made it political. Some people today look at the Jewish people and say, there's a connection with Israel. Israel is evil. They don't have a right to be in Israel. Well, we all know better. Anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, used to be, and still is, a perception. It's holding Jews liable for blood libel, saying that they suck blood, they take our money, they take our children, that they're too rich and they control everything, that they're too poor and are using up our resources. These are classical anti-Semitic tropes. But today, anti-Semitism is expressed through anti-Zionism. It's the denial of Jewish identity, the denial of Jewish history. It's saying that the Jewish people don't have a right to be in Israel. Now, let's go back for a second, and you all know this because you're here, you read the Bible. Where are Jews from? Jews are from Judea. That's where the name comes from. Judea and Samaria are what parts of today's West Bank. That is the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, since God promised it to them, since Moses led them to the promised land. And for centuries they've lived there. They've been kicked out, colonized, oppressed in their own homeland, kicked out of it many, many times, but they've always maintained that connection. So 1947, after World War II, State of Israel is founded. The State of Israel didn't come out of nowhere. It was the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people that was promised to them, not just by God, but by the nice people in the international community who had this nice little peace agreement at the end of World War I, where they agreed that Israel would be restored to the Jewish people. And back then, Israel also meant what today is Jordan. So that was a huge swath of land. 1947, the Jewish state, Israel. And that suddenly becomes political. People say that the Jews are occupiers, that they're colonists. How do you colonize or occupy your own land? The same as saying that you're occupying this church. This is your church. This is the church of God. It's not something that you are occupying. It's something that your heart is drawn to, that you have a right to. But that denial of Jewish identity, that denial of Jewish indigeneity to Israel and the Middle East, that's anti-Zionism. Zionism is the connection between the Jewish people and Israel. It's that liberation movement that was started in the Bible. It was started with Moses, really, of finding that liberation from oppression, finding that one place where you call home. And today people deny that. That's the modern anti-Semitism. When you're going up to a student and saying, oh, we don't care that you're Jewish. We don't like Zionists. Same thing. That's really what it comes down to. It's the same thing. If you're a Jew, if you believe in the Jewish state, if you believe in Israel as the homeland of the Jewish people, you're a Zionist. So how do you exclude one but not the other? You can't. So we've gone from anti-Semitism of olden days of, they suck blood, or they steal our money, or they steal our babies, to, well, they have this claim to Israel, and that's not their land. And that's what we're seeing today. We're seeing it become politicized. We're seeing protests on city streets. We're seeing in a New York City subway car where a group of masked protesters comes in and says, are there any Zionists on here? Get out. This is your last warning. It's intimidation. It's harassment. It's depriving people, the Jewish people, of their rights on a daily basis. It's attacking college students. It's attacking people on the streets. Who else has to be exposed to people marching on city streets, wearing masks, not for COVID, but to hide their identity, waving the flag of a designated foreign terrorist organization whose sole purpose is to kill people, and yelling about liberation, jihad, about intifada, which is violence against Jews, resistance by any means necessary, banging on drums, hitting people, hurting them, committing hate crime attacks, vandalism, desecrating synagogues, desecrating holy sites. That's the experience of the Jewish people today. We may be marking International Holocaust Remembrance Day, but the experience of the Jewish people today makes them believe that the next Holocaust is around the corner. and the discussions that Jews have with their non-Jewish friends, and some people appreciate it and get it, some don't, will you hide me? When they come for me, not if they come for me, when they come for me, will you hide my family? Will you help my kids? Because we see it every single day. Every time you turn on the news and see another protest, and I have to put quotes around that, anytime you see these pro-Hamas protests taking place and nothing being done about it, people being silent about it, people saying, well, they're entitled to protest, that's lacking of moral clarity, that's lacking in good faith, that's lacking in support for the Jewish people who are being threatened by this. And they start to wonder, are you there with me, or are you going to be one of those people who did nothing during the Holocaust? Will you speak out? Will you support me? More than anything, that's what's needed. That's why this is a civil rights issue, because there are legal protections, but people have to recognize that. People need that support. People need that activism. People need to know that as bad as things are, they have friendship, they have unity, they have solidarity from everyone else. That when they are accused of being something that they're not, when they're called dirty and spat upon, good people don't just sit there and say nothing and do nothing. Good people speak out. So what I do on a daily basis is I work with these people. I work with people who are victims of hate crimes, people who are unable to go to class because they're not welcomed in class for being Jewish. Not of anything they do, not of anything they say, just the mere fact that they support Israel's right to exist, that they want to practice their religion in whatever manner they choose, and they're prevented from doing so. That's Jew hatred. Every single day. It's not gone away. It hasn't improved magically. If anything, after October 7, we see it, and we see it clearly for what it is. Because guess what? It's not just about Jews. This radicalization affects all of us. It's about shaking our concept of democracy, shaking our laws. And where do our laws come from? Yes, the people in Washington, D.C., but ultimately, what's the basis of our law? It's the Bible. And when you start questioning Western democracy, when you start questioning and uprooting law, you're not just challenging the laws made by man, you're challenging the laws made by God. Which is why all of us are in this together. Because what affects the Jewish people doesn't just affect the Jewish people, it affects all of us. When you have people who want to curtail the right of one group to practice their religion, they're really looking at a way to curtail all of us in practicing religion, because they don't care. They want what they want. But we have to remember why we're here. We're not just here to live about our lives, to be lawyers, to be doctors, to be working at a store, to be doing our business and taking care of our families. We're here for a greater purpose too. And that purpose is to, in many ways, in our own way, in whatever way we worship, to celebrate God's will. And God's will is not that we be silent, that we let atrocities take place. God's will is not that we ignore the suffering of others. We have a fellowship, we have humanity, we have faith, but we need to act on that faith. We can't just leave it for someone else to take care of. We can't just leave it in God's hands. We have to implement that. We have to stand up for one another. Every day, I get to see the worst aspects of humanity. I can't even call it humanity. You're working in a store and people come and start breaking your windows because you're Jewish. You go to work and you have to keep your mouth shut as people who you think are your friends are calling out, oh, these evil Jews, all they want to do is take over the Middle East. They took over Israel, now they want to take over other countries. They want to invade, they want to attack, basically making stuff up as they go along. But they can't speak out, they're afraid to, because not enough people are upstanders. Not enough people are speaking out in support of them. People keep their heads down. They don't want to be involved, but that's a mistake. That's the same type of mistake that led to the Holocaust. That's the same type of mistake that's led to the deprivation of rights throughout our history. That's why we've had civil rights movements to come together and speak out. We know this in Memphis. We've seen the shared experience of Memphis, of standing up for humanity, standing up for civil rights, making sure that society understands everyone is protected, everyone is entitled to that protection by law. But we're not doing that today for the Jewish people. We're leaving it for others. And I don't know who these others are. I always thought that there were others working on it. The ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, okay, that's one organization. They've done great stuff. They've also moved into helping other minority groups, so they've moved away from their mission. So who helps the Jewish people today? Lawfare Project, End You Hate, there are other organizations. But ultimately, it's up to everyone here to show that support and that solidarity. That's the point of upholding the rule of law for all. That's the point of listening to what is in your heart, what God puts in your heart. It's helping one another. It's not being silent. It's not letting things happen. It's not saying it depends on the context. Acting on hate never depends on context. Acting on hate is always wrong. And everyone here knows that. And at the end of the day, that's really the important thing, is to know where you stand as a people, as a human being, as a community. That doing the right thing means not being silent. That doing the right thing means showing up. That when you have, let me give you a practical example. A lot of towns, a lot of cities, they have city councils. And you have people who go and put resolutions demanding that the city not do business with Jews, not do business with Israel. It's called BDS, Boycott, Divest, and Sanction. It's a way to intimidate Jews, to drive them from public life. It's an economic boycott. It's a cultural boycott. It's a way of discriminating. That's what this is. It's discrimination, period. But people go to their city councils, people go to their governors, to their legislators, and say, we want to pass this resolution that you're not going to do business with Israel. The problem is that for every lawyer like me that's out there fighting it, we need people like you to make your voices heard. This is just one example of where you can, call and support the Jewish people, where you can write letters, send emails, grassroots support. Whenever you see one of these acts of hate being tried out, you need to speak up. When you see a student on a college campus who's being surrounded by people who are shoving him, who are pushing him, it doesn't matter why, but nowadays, let's face it, it's because they're Jewish, you have to speak up. You have to make people accountable, that there have to be consequences for this type of hate. We also know this in the Bible, because as much as God is a God of love, we know that God is perfectly capable of punishing people. That's what the Old Testament is, that there are consequences for your actions. And we as a society need to remind people of that. We need to remind people who we elect into office. We need to remind the people who run our schools that our rights, the Jewish civil rights, that our civil rights, they're not up for debate. They're not political. It's not about where you stand on the state of Israel. Hate is wrong. Acting on hate is wrong. Acting on hate needs to have consequences. And that won't ever happen if all of us stay quiet. So the biggest thing about Solidarity Sunday is not just remembering what happened in World War II, not just remembering the Holocaust. It's about realizing that the Holocaust happens in pretty much every generation to some extent. Pogroms, kicking Jews out of their cities, of their towns, of their profession. Not just in the US, but globally. We're representing a doctor, a Swedish doctor, who was driven out of his hospital by people who would make comments about his hook nose. And, oh, there comes the Jewish lobby. Is there a smell in the air? Imagine working in a setting like that where every day you're exposed to hostility. You're a skilled doctor. People want your help, but you can't give it to them because you're being driven out of your field because people hate you. Not for something you've done, not for something you've said, but merely for something you are. That's not something that we can allow to keep happening. So when we say never again, I hate to tell you, but never again is happening right now. October 7 is the again part, not just in Israel, not just people attacking to drive Jews out of their homeland, to drive all of us out of our homeland. When you think about it, it's happening here too. It's happening in our streets. It's happening in our college campuses. The again part, the exclusion from society, we've seen that before. Jews were kicked out of the learned professions in Germany before the Holocaust started. That's what's happening here. You're being driven from your school. You're being driven from your workplace. So the important thing is unity. It's that solidarity. It's not just saying, never again, this happened once, we won't let it happen again. Good, you're saying that. but it is happening. So all of us have that responsibility to speak up. You know, that saying, see something, say something. We have that moral duty to say something. We have that moral duty to be clear and unequivocal that we will not allow hate, that we will not allow acts of violence, that we have a higher calling to one another, to God, and that we will drive this hate from our society. So when you see something, you have to act on it. You have to tell people. You have to alert authorities. You have to be strong as a community and show love. Listen to stories. Listen to your friends who are Jewish. If you don't have a Jewish friend, find one. You know, just be there for them. Be that sympathetic ear that understands that what they're going through is life-changing. It has, when you're being beaten down every single day, it's hard to get up. Even with faith, it's hard to get up. So you have to be there to support your fellow man. So solidarity, that you have to put it into practice. It's such a privilege to be here because you all care. You all understand. You read scripture. You believe the word of God. Other people don't. And we can't change the world, but we have to try. We have to try to make it better for our fellow man. And right now, the community that needs it most is the Jewish community. Going back to Moses, the Jewish people are the world's oldest and most persecuted minority people. If we don't stop now this hatred, it will keep going on. And we will be having this speech not just next year, but 100 years from now. Society doesn't get better when we have no action. So we have to mobilize. We have to be there to support in practical ways, in tangible ways. It still comes back to see something, say something. Don't be silent. Because when there's silence, you feel unsupported. The Jewish people feel unsupported. When all they hear is, you don't belong here, they begin to believe it. They need to know, everyone needs to know that they are included, that they are loved and welcomed. That's the power of faith. And that's the power each one of you has to share that, to make a difference in people's lives. And right now, when we're seeing violence, when we're seeing attacks, when we're seeing people disparaged for their beliefs, for their history, for their religion, now's the time to make a difference. It's not about waiting for the next Holocaust. It's not about waiting for someone else to do something. Nothing good happens waiting. You have to act. And that's why I'm so pleased to be here and with people who care, and Eagle's Wings and the Moral Hearts Alliance, great organizations that understand that this isn't just a Jewish issue. It's not a Christian issue. It's more than an American issue. It's an issue that affects all of us. It's a whole of society issue. And ultimately, it's the same God, it's the same beliefs, the same basic beliefs that bring us together. And we can't allow that division that we're seeing now drive us apart. Because together, that's how we make a difference. Together, supporting the people who need it most. And right now, I hate to say it, but it really is the Jewish people. October 7th changed the world. It opened eyes to what's going on, to how bad it is. Jew hatred did not start on October 7, but what we're seeing now, what everyone is seeing, is how bad it has been and how much worse it's getting. And it's getting worse because people are not paying attention and people are not helping. People say it's, oh, Israel, they can deal with it over there. It's not over there, it's over here. It's in our schools, not just colleges, but K-12. I've had the misfortune of speaking to kids as young as in the 4th grade who are getting Jew hatred not just from their peers or from parents, but from teachers. There's indoctrination because for decades now, this hatred has permeated curriculums. They teach it in schools. They teach it in the anti-Zionist context, which they deem politically correct, that Jews occupied their own homeland and they're bad. They teach that in school. So by the time you get to college, little wonder that there are physical assaults. Little wonder that people are being excluded because it happens younger and younger. So all of you, I mean, if you have kids, if you are part of your community, you have to pay attention to what's going on in your school boards. as you know, it's not just about Jews, it's about a lot of our values that are under threat. You have to be involved. If not for yourselves and the Jewish people, for all of us, because when you don't pay attention, this is the stuff that they pull in school. When I was in school, I knew how many genders there were. I knew that it was wrong to have hate. I knew that any hate was unacceptable. But now we're wishy-washy. If you're religious, you're bad. If you are the 73rd gender, you're good. I'm not trying to make a moral judgment here, but something's messed up, which is why you have to act. You can't wait for someone else. You can vote for people to act, but that still won't change it. You have to show up to your school board. You have to show up and participate. You have to know what they're doing in school, because that's where they start teaching hate. That's where they don't extinguish the hate that people come to school with. So that's one thing everyone can do here after you leave on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever. Pay attention to what's going on in your schools. Learn what curriculum is being shared. Speak up when you find it objectionable, because a lot of it is. That's where anti-Semitism is taught. That's why anti-democratic values are taught. That's where you're taught it's okay to hate religion, that religion's bad. Not Jewish, but I had someone come up to me to complain about their school. They learned in history class that Jesus Christ was the world's first communist. Okay, why are you politicizing the classroom? Why are you injecting religion in a negative way? Because we're not paying attention. We have to be involved. So that's what solidarity is. It's being involved. It's knowing that what affects, in this case, the Jewish people, affects all of us. Because it's all of us who are under attack, all of us who are under threat. It's our faith that's being shaken. But we can't allow that to happen. We have faith. We have to stand up for ourselves. We have to stand up for others and stop this hate. And that's something I know all of you can do and will do. That's why you're here. Your pastor's an incredible man. I mean, he's brought all of you together in the Bible Belt, where there's no absence of churches. And you're all here because you have that faith, you have that belief, you have that the shared principles and values. We all have these shared principles and values. Doesn't matter if you're Jewish, doesn't matter if you're a member of this congregation, of a temple, of anywhere. We all have the same basic human values inspired and instilled in us by God. And right now, we have to unite and keep that messaging clear, that we will stand up against evil, and we will support our fellow man right now, today, in 2025. I can't believe it's 2025. We're facing that battle with the Jewish community. They are under threat. Their existence is under threat. People are asking if it's safer to move back or to move to Israel, where there are terrorist attacks and rockets are being launched at you every day, because they feel that's safer than walking down the street in a major American city. They feel that living in a war zone with their children is safer than sending them to Harvard or the local community college, for that matter. That doesn't make the news, but it really is everywhere. That's not a society we can be proud of when we're allowing one group to be excluded and marginalized and be told it's okay to move because you're safer in a war zone where terrorists want to kill you on a daily basis than to live in a society that's supposed to be democratic, free, and open for all. Somewhere, we've screwed up. Somewhere, we screwed a lot of things up. But we can make it right because we have faith, not just in God, but in one another. And acting together is how we change it. Not being silent, not just watching the news and shaking your head, but being active, whether it's figuring out what's going on in your school or your city council, what's going on at your workplace. Your workplace may have policies about every other minority group. What's their policy on anti-Semitism? Do they have one? What's the policy for attacks against minorities? Do they have one? These are questions that anyone can ask. You don't need to be Jewish to ask. You don't need to be Jewish to care. But being involved, ultimately, that's what it counts. That's what needs to happen. Because it's not just about supporting Israel. Everyone, we all love Israel. We understand what Israel is from the Bible. But Israel also means the Jewish people. And it means upholding civil rights and fighting for civil rights protections. It doesn't mean just, we love Israel over there. It means showing your love by supporting the people of Israel, which means showing support for the Jewish people here and now. And I know, I have faith that people will come together. People are coming together. Because despite seeing the worst on a daily basis, I also see hope. I also see people coming together. End Jew Hatred as a movement brings together people. It doesn't matter what your politics are. You don't need to be on the left or on the right to hate, to act against hate. We've got fellows on college campuses, some of whom aren't even Jewish. We have Christian fellows on college campuses fighting to end Jew hatred. That makes me feel like we're making a difference, that all of us are making a difference. It's getting that message out, one person at a time, that hate is wrong and that we can do something about it. And I see people wanting to be involved, asking how they can be involved, how they can support. People who want to host a listening experience, to have that discussion and ask directly, what can I do to help? What can I do to make things better? So that actually gives me hope. Being here gives me hope. Seeing all of you gives me hope. The warm reception and the nods, it's not politeness. You all care. I see that, and that gives me hope. Where do we go from here? I mean, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of fighting to be done. But the fight is a good fight. It's the right fight. It's the fight of good over evil. And that's something we're all used to, because we've seen that in the Bible. We've seen that throughout our history, that we have to fight the good fight. We can't let the darkness into our hearts. And when we see that darkness has entered someone's heart, we want to help them come out of it. We want to explain why that hate is wrong, and that everyone has the same rights, the same right to love, the same right to respect, the same right to live their lives as everyone else. That comes from God, and that's something that we can all share, no matter how we worship or what else we do in our lives. That's something we all share. So when we're here today, tomorrow is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, when we all say never again, we have to understand that that means taking action now. And taking action now means standing in support of the Jewish people, standing in support of Israel, because that's where the support is needed now. We need to speak out in this country, loud and proud, in support of Israel and the Jewish people. We need to speak up in this country in support of one another and doing the right thing, so that we all have the same benefit, the same right to worship in peace and safety, to go to school in peace and safety, to go to work in peace and safety, to raise our families in peace and safety. No one should be excluded because they're Jewish, because they're Christian, because they're anything. And we need to fight for an America where that is actually what happens. So thank you all for being here today, for warmly welcoming me to your services.
These stories, these testimonies are overwhelming. It's amazing to hear the strength, the perseverance, the resilience of the Jewish people. I want to invite you to join me and come alongside our covenantal older brother in faith, the Jewish community. You can do that by going to eagleswings.org and becoming a partner today. You can plant a tree in Israel, in our forest of life, an amazing, amazing forest that literally the desert is blossoming as the rose. You can feed hungry Israeli families through our Abraham's Bread feeding program. There's so many different ways for you to be involved, but let me hear from you today. Make your best gift today and ask your church to be involved in next year's Solidarity Sunday. All of the information is there in the link. We are believing that hundreds and hundreds of churches are going to join together every year and understand that never again is now, and we have to be a part of that solution. I look forward for your prayers, your giving, your partnership, making a difference in this generation. Solidarity Sunday, be a part of it.